Hello guys, thanks for joining this session. In this session, we are going to discuss about another VPC components that is called route table. So let's jump into the discussion from where we have left earlier. So last time we have discussed about subnets and CIDR block. So in this session, we are going to discuss about route table. So what actually route table is and why we use route table. So route table is one of the component of VPC where we can store the routing information about the subnet. So let's jump into the diagram and we will discuss in more detail about the route tables. But before understanding that how route table works, I wanted to discuss some of the major route table concepts. So let's look into that what actually it is, and then we will come over here and discuss further.
So these are the 6 concepts which we are going to discuss. So let's start with main route table. So what happens is that when you create a VPC, it automatically has a main route table. So the question over here is what actually this main route table do? So the answer is the main route table controls the routing for all subnets that are not explicitly associated with any other route table. You will come to know more about main route table when we will do the lab. Some of the points to remember for main route table is that by default, when we create a non-default VPC, the main route table contains only a local route. So here we get a new term that is non-default VPC. I wanted to let you know that there are 2 ways by which you can create a VPC. The first way is the wizard based, that we call it as a default VPC. As most of the configuration we will use the default one which was provided by AWS, and we will stick with those configuration. We will not do any kind of a changes. So this VPC is referred as default VPC. There is another way that is called non-default VPC, that is related to the custom VPC creation, where we need to configure each component of VPC and then later we will associate those components at the time of creating VPC. So these 2 concepts you should remember whenever you are hearing non-default VPC, that means it is related to the custom VPC where we provide our configuration. And whenever you are hearing default VPC, that means they are talking about we have used wizard based VPC creation and we have kept the configuration as is whichever AWS has provided. So as simple as this. So moving further, another point to remember is that when we use the VPC wizard in the console to create a non-default VPC with a NAT gateway or virtual private gateway, the wizard automatically adds route to the main route table for those gateways. Another important points to remember is that we can't delete the main route table, but we can replace the main route table with a custom route table. So now move further, we will discuss about custom route table. By default, a custom route table is empty and we can add route whenever we need it. When we use the VPC wizard in the console to create a VPC with an internet gateway, the wizard creates a custom route table and adds a route to the internet gateway. One way to protect your VPC is to leave the main route table in its original default state. Then explicitly associate each new subnet that you create with one of the custom route tables you have created. So this ensures that you explicitly control how each subnet routes traffic. Same like main route table, we can add, remove and modify routes within custom route table, but here unlike main route table we have an option to delete the custom route table, but we don't have any option to delete main route table. So this is one of the difference between custom route table and main route table. Let's move further and understand route table association. So it is basically association between a route table and subnet. The route table associated with the subnet controls the routing for that subnet. This is quite straightforward. So moving further and look into the destination, this is also straightforward. So basically destination related to the destination CIDR where you want traffic from your subnet to go. Once we understand destination, now we will move further and look into target. Target is also very much straightforward. The target through which send the destination traffic. So here, for example, internet gateway. Moving further to another concept, that is local route. Local route is nothing but a default route for communication within VPC. So now we understand these concepts. We will move further and go into the diagram. We will understand that how VPC route table works. So if you look into this diagram, you will find that there is something called router. This is called implicit router or implied router that we use with route table to control where network traffic is directed. Each subnet in our VPC must be associated with a route table which controls the routing for the subnet. We can explicitly associate a subnet with a particular route table. Otherwise, the subnet is implicitly associated with the main route table. One point to remember over here is that a subnet can only be associated with one route table at a time, but you can associate multiple subnets with the same route table. This is important. So this is what I wanted to discuss in this session. But prior to closing this session, I wanted to show you how the routing table look like. So basically it look like this, where we have an entry for destination and the target. This is the entry for the CIDR block, and which is referring to the local. This is also referring to the local. Here we are finding that internet gateway entry, so that it will communicate with the internet. When we do the lab, then we will find all these things and you will feel more comfortable with all these concepts. One thing I wanted to tell you that if you are not able to understand any of these concepts, that's perfectly fine. What you have to do, you need to go to the lab and look into the lab and understand that what are the things exist over there, and then again come back and look into these concepts. That will make much sense if you follow the reverse learning process. You too can try this one. So that's it guys for this session. See you in the next session. Till then, bye bye.